Hi everyone, Lucy here. Andy and I have just finished recording a bit of a monster podcast. We did a review of the business over the last 5 years, and because it went on and became a pretty juicy episode, we've split it down into two. So this is part one. I hope you really enjoy it, and if you do, you can then move on and listen to part two. Welcome to Candid Founders, where we will give you a candid view of a growing business.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Candid Founders. We're a podcast where we talk about the business in all its warts and all, try to be as transparent as possible about us growing our e-com business, which is Bear Kind, a bamboo sock company where 10% of the profits go to the animal on the sock. Hopefully you guys know Lucy Jeffrey, founder. We wanted to do a session where we kind of walked through the past 5 years of the company's growth, which is crazy to think we're kind of up to 5 years now. Mental. And so we're going to walk through on a month-by-month basis, looking at, year-by-year basis, looking at how we're growing from marketing, product, team. It's been actually really fascinating. And I think one of the really cool call-outs is to see how different businesses grow and what they do at different times. So I'm really excited for this session, actually. What do you reckon, Lucy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good. Sorry, I was just laughing before about the idea of going through month by month for the past 5 years.
We're going to do this for 60 times.
Hold on, guys. Really important, because I think I probably didn't share much about the journey in the early days. It's going to be interesting to see how, it's developed over the last 5 years, going through the ins and outs, the ups and downs, kind of showing, as you said, warts and all. Like, there are like peaks and troughs with any business, and so I think really important to show that. And technically I'm the only person that's been in the business from the very start. However, we've lived together since the start, so you've also seen, I guess, almost as an outsider, like those peaks and troughs and how that's affected me, and as a result what happens with the business. So yeah, I guess grateful that we're here today at 5 years, being able to look back on this journey. Hopefully we can do this in another 5 years, but yeah, let's get cracking.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome shout. And one of the biggest things I'd probably say is like, view this from like your lens of where you are in your journey, because some of the advice that we give to startups that are, kind of they've just sold out to their first kind of like family and friends round is very different to the advice that we give people that are kind of 2-3 years into the business. And I think that's really lost on so many people. There is just different things at different times you need to do. So we went for a UK agency. That was probably pretty good for us last year, but if I'd suggested that the year before, it wouldn't have been the right call.
Marketing agency.
That is. And so really trying to like understand exactly when is crucial for this.
Yeah. And I guess take it with a pinch of salt. This is our journey and what we've done with the company, but I guess slightly different for everyone. But I just hope that it's useful and you can kind of learn from what we've done before. Awesome.
So without further ado, we're going to start off with different sections and I'll highlight them. The first is around revenue. So at a high level, 2018, 4.4K, 2019, 10K, 2020, 20K, 2021, 200, and then 2022, 500K.
Wow.
What do you think?
It's actually amazing looking back on that, really. Like, some big jumps. And I think the key big jump was me leaving my job. That was at the point where I was like, this business is my job now and I have to make it work. And so there was a lot more work went into 2021 than any of the previous years. It was a side project before that. Yeah. Amazing that it generated a bit of revenue. So yeah, it's quite stark when you look at those numbers, obviously. Like, there's a lot more behind those, in which we'll go into detail on them, but that is the high level. That's how it's grown over the last 5 years.
And we grew 100 times. Like, that's pretty crazy. From just 4,400 pounds.
I'd like to do that again this year. I just don't think that's going to happen.
In the next 5 years, can we get to a decent clip in revenue? And I think it's interesting to see as well, like the jump. So 4K, then you 2 times that to 10K, 2 times that to 20K. And that really was part-time. And then you had, obviously, 2020, I think that's when we hit into COVID in a big way. You took the loan and then you went out, and I think like a really crucial point was you got 2019's revenue really in quarter four, almost, of 2020. And then you were like, okay, cool. This is something I think I could leave. Revenue was a big driver of that, I think.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'd actually like to take it a step back. 2020, I closed the business down because at this point, my mum was doing my shipping for me. COVID hit, we're in lockdown, and I said, don't leave the house, obviously. So we just shut the business down. I was like, let's just stop sales. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this business.
You were kind of done with it, to be honest, as well.
I was like, I'm not really sure where I'm going with it. So I was like, don't worry, let's just shut the website down for now, and then we'll think about it later. And then the COVID loans came in, and I think naturally, because you'd started working on them within your own job, and I was still working for the bank at the time, I was hearing about these things and thinking, like, I'm actually eligible for a loan, maybe I go for it. It was 0% interest for a year, and I was like, worst comes to worst, I just leave it in the account, do nothing with it, pay it back at the end, no harm done. So I took out, it wasn't much, it was like $3,000 or something, like quite a small loan. Took out 3k and was like, I'm just going to pump this into Facebook ads and see what happens. There wasn't much science behind it. I was like, let's just see what happens. I've got a load of stock left and I need to either burn through it and then that's it, I'd move on to something else, or I don't know. I had no real plan, and we sold through all that stock very quickly. Like by the end of November, we'd sold out. I actually made no sales in December because we'd sold out of stock. But I'd already quit. So it was quite funny going back looking at that revenue. I'd handed my notice in, and then I had about £400 of sales in December because I had no stock. But I was there like, it's fine, I'm gonna
everything's okay.
Yeah.
But I also think it was interesting to, and we'll go into this maybe later, but let's touch on your like attitude and your mindset during that time. So talking about like the ebbs and flows, 4k 10k it was kind of like a part-time thing. You wanted to help animals. That was your passion, but there was a lot of work involved in that. And I would say, like, some days it would be 10 minutes of your time. Other days you wouldn't touch it. Other days you do a couple of hours. And that was like up and down. But I don't know if you really could have worked full time on it at that point either.
No, not in the early days, because it was, I guess, for people that don't know the business as well. It wasn't socks to start with. So our main product is our bamboo socks. We donate 10% of the profits to the charities. This is what I've quit my job for. But before that, it was other products. I had reusable straws, recycled t-shirts. And again, it was a fun little project, and I learned about setting up a business, but I really don't think I was passionate about them because I just was not spending much time on it. And I think a key conversation that like lives in my head rent free is one of my friends at work on the grad scheme was like, when are you quitting? Like, when are you going to quit and do
Really?
Yeah, it was for Debt actually. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Who we need to get on the podcast because she's also someone that was at HSBC with us and quit to do her own thing and is smashing it. And she was, so she was like, when are you going to quit? And I was like, don't be silly. Like, no, I could never be an entrepreneur. I can't deal with the risk. It's too much. But now looking back, I'm like, I could never work for someone again, I don't think. I think I'd really find it hard to go back. So I've completely flipped, and I think that's okay. Like, you don't always have the mindset of like, I wasn't always into the business. And sometimes I'm not. So like even now, sometimes I'll be like, I'm having a really bad day. What am I doing? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to stay on the energy all the time.
Yeah. And I thought it was one of the biggest things that enabled us to do this was I was working at HSBC and I was earning really good money, and between us as a couple, we were like, well, what's the worst that happens here?
Yeah.
Like, we're doing okay from like my income, and we kind of just like de-risked it through that by saying, well, worst comes to worst, you go back, you take some time off. The job really wasn't for you at that time.
No.
I remember you were not enjoying it at all, and you weren't putting much work into it. So it wasn't really a career that you were giving up that was going to go anywhere too fast for you. You were doing a good job, but it wasn't your passion. And then we said, I remember this vividly, I was like, well, let's try it out. You can get it big, and then I can come in when we're ready to like make it a bit bigger as well. But it had to get to that point first.
Yeah. It was definitely a calculated risk. And, I was lucky to have your support backing me to be like, go do it. Take it, roll the dice. And I think that's a really important consideration. What else is going in your life that enables you to take a leap? Because and I get a mindset thing again. The year before, when realistically I could have had an extra year running the business if I'd quit earlier, but I wasn't ready for it. And maybe
neither was the
wasn't
business.
ready. No, the business wasn't ready. Yeah. So it's just all about the time was right when it happened.
And I say this is probably like a common thing that we see across entrepreneurs that are in a really strong relationship. They've got someone they can fall back on. It's just kind of like unlocking that for them and saying to them, hey guys, well, you've got a really strong relationship. Like, just use that.
Yeah.
Why not? Like, your partner's going nowhere. They're earning really good money. You're going to be okay. You're going to roll the dice. And that's where the value is, just rolling that dice.
Especially if you don't have a co-founder, which I've discovered, I think, since starting to work with you, how much it unlocks my brain again. Because there's only so much. I think being a solo founder is cool, but there's just too much for you to take on. Like you have a limit. Yeah, you just have a limit in how many plates you can spin. And the mental load gets a bit much, I think. So,
or just sometimes you just kind of like stick in a rut where someone else isn't in the rut, and you're like, "Well, come on, guys, let's go." Like that happens where you've just burned yourself out working so hard, and I'm like, "Okay, let's take a day off." Take the day off, and then we come back at it, and we work hard. And equally, the same thing happens with me. So let's get into so that's revenue. Really good to see how that affects kind of us going in full time. Product. So at a really high level, Lucy, you went, straws in 2018, added bags and t-shirts, and then in Christmas, you added socks at the last half of 2019. You then moved kind of like bags and t-shirts becoming probably non-core, and you went really hard into socks, becoming the primary focus. 2021, bags and t-shirts are pretty much in runoff. We've added more designs in May, September, August, and then jungle socks in Christmas. And then 2022, again, more socks. Yeah. So how has the product evolved and I guess why did it evolve?
I think based on feedback was the first decisions. So I knew, as I said before, that there wasn't much in the straws and the bags. I think I was going where my passion took me at that point, or where my energy was.
Yeah.
So the socks at the end of 2019 was just one design. I did turtles. That was my first sock. Released them, small run, but people were really keen for it.
And why was that? Same, I guess, question with why straws? Why was that your first product?
Why straws? Honestly, because I went for drinks with a friend, and so 2018, and she took a metal straw out of her bag. And I was like, what are you doing? Why have you got a straw? This is before like the days of straws happening. She took it out of her bag, and I was like, that's weird. What are you doing? She was like, oh, so I don't have to use plastic straws. And I was like, that's genius.
Yeah, smart.
Need to make this a thing. And I don't think I didn't invent straws or anything. I think they were like around, but not as big as they like became. And it was just a silver one she's had. And I was like, I think I can make them look prettier. So I just went and bought out some rainbow ones, some rose gold ones. And then so did everyone else. And that's the thing. I don't think the product had proper legs to be just a straw company, because they just ended up being everywhere and they were exactly the same product. There was no USP in the end.
No. But I also remember, and kind of linking into why socks was turtles were a massive part of straws at that point.
Yeah, so it was, I think the video that was going viral at the time was a turtle with a plastic straw up its nose, and like clearly in a lot of pain, them trying to get this straw. It's just traumatizing. And so turtles had, I guess, been a bit of a mascot for us. So I thought, oh, that's, I want to support them. I want to donate to animal conservation. Let's start with turtles. And then I did a turtle design for socks. And why socks? I just really like socks. Like I think there's not much decision making behind some of these things. Like I was just like, I just go where my like gut is taking me. So I went with socks, and it happened to work really well. And I'm still doing socks. Interestingly enough, my first word was actually socks.
Not a lie either.
Not a lie. No. So this is almost like a fateful thing. This is how it's ended up.
And I think, like, you say there wasn't much thought behind it, but I think the gut was so important. And I also think you took on a lot more risk than I was probably willing to like consider as well, because you went from like drop shipping straws to buying straws to then buying a whole lot of socks. And at each point we were looking at kind of like 1,000 plus kind of pounds of stock, but it wasn't so much that it was going to break you, one, and then two, you also seem to get lucky. And the kind of people use this of like, oh, Lucy seems to get lucky, but looking from like as close as I have, it's not actually luck. It's just kind of like putting yourself in the right position. And so, you know, we could say that we're lucky and like the socks have taken off, but we spent so much time and effort on bags, t-shirts, markets that just like weren't working at all. And how crucial it was to kind of roll the dice a few times, even though we thought we had like a great t-shirt. So the t-shirt product, for example, was made of plastic. It was really cool. It felt super soft. They still look great. And we've got like a bunch of them, but they just didn't take off. And I was like, if you'd asked me like what is going to be like the biggest product here, I buy so many more t-shirts. At least I thought I did, but I actually kind of get a lot more socks. Yeah. And socks took off, whereas, you know, bags were kind of, I don't know many people that buy a bag, and t-shirts just really didn't go anywhere.
There's just t-shirts for everywhere. You can get a t-shirt from any brand. This is the thing. Like, I don't think they were 100% recycled, so they were cool, and I did really like them, and they were good quality, but not super unique. And I think
I thought they were like with the plastic.
Maybe we'll do a run of t-shirts event. Like maybe there just needs to be more brand awareness before you then go into t-shirts. You take someone like, I don't know. I guess maybe Gymshark. Any product they bring out, like I remember them doing like a 10-year anniversary product launch, and it was like not even gym wear, just kind of like stash of like Gymshark 10 years. You just think that flies off the shelves just because people were like fans at that point.
Which is crazy. And I mean, the bags and the t-shirts, I remember you speaking with a couple of business coaches in particular. What was their advice to you kind of in that time, 2019, 2020, 2021?
About the bags and the oh yeah, actually they were like, it's age stock, get rid. Like very much so. Like I was speaking to a business coach, and she used to run a load of Flying Tiger stores in Wales. So she had done product business and, you know, the movement of stock and stuff, and she was like, as soon as it gets to a certain point, that's age stock, get rid. And, you know, we've got a tiny amount of stock left that we could probably, you know, distribute to friends and families or use as like a promotional event or something. But yeah, really, she was like, just get rid. At that point, it's not, you know, if it's not sold by that, like, I don't know, a year or whatever the amount is, then it's not worth its weight at all.
Yeah. And it was also awesome because I think at that point you had already knuckled down even before you had the advice from Helen, but it was super helpful to have someone else just kind of give you that tick of approval. Because I remember you going like, actually, I'm going to double down here on socks. I'm going to go more SKUs. It's working. We're sold out on them. Bags, t-shirts. We could have used those funds from the socks to kind of get more, maybe like roll the dice again, but it was just pushing the boulder that was rolling down the hill rather than pushing it up the hill.
Yeah. Oh, definite gut instinct. Just follow that. Follow the data. And also, straws was my first product, but I didn't cling to it. I think that was the key thing that I've been told is really good.
Yeah, you really weren't like married to it.
Yeah, and that's actually, it can be some people's downfall, that if you stick, you know, you're married to a product that you need to make work and you keep going and keep going and going, and the data is just not, people are not buying it, you need to learn to let go because maybe it's just not meant to be. But yeah, again, I wasn't married to it, so I guess maybe easier for me to let go of them. And
so started with the turtle socks in 2019. What were you thinking about in terms of adding more socks to the lineup? What were you doing in, I guess, 2020 and then 2021? How did you think about growing the line, and why did you grow it like that?
It was quite reactive, to be honest. I think we've got more proactive with our like designs, because I brought out turtle socks and then straight away people were like, what's next? Of course, because I'd only brought out one design. So quite quickly started designing the next set I had 5 originals in total. Then I quit, and then I started a new set and we brought out 5 in the May. So like 5 months after I left. Then really noticed the value, because we had like our biggest sales day ever on launch day, and I was like, okay, I've got a really like loyal customer base here who are just keen for socks. So
yeah, just bring out more socks, more animals, more colors.
So we did quite a lot of fast followers and maybe tripled our range within that in 2021, and then since then we've probably doubled that, so we're at probably like 40 different designs now, and got loads more in the pipeline. Loads of designs coming, so watch out for them.
And I look into like kind of how the product line is developed, adding more animals, adding more different styles of socks. We've got trainer socks, we've got children's socks, we've got ribbed socks. We're also looking at adding more technical socks as well. And then into 2023, one of the things that we're starting to see is really probably noticing like what are the successful sock brands doing. And we're looking at, so Happy Socks, for example, they're releasing hundreds of socks, every month or every couple of months in their different designs. And that enables a really interesting mix for wholesale suppliers, for retail customers, and everyone's getting quite like interested in that, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that probably, I think, covers us quite nicely on product. I think probably the next section we want to go into is shipping. It might seem a bit naff to begin with, but really it was so crucial and a massive unlock. So 2018, it was just yourself.
Yeah.
Then it moved into your mum during Christmas whilst we were away. Then your mum did it for 2 years, which is crazy. That went past really quickly.
Real quick, yeah.
Until 2020. Then 2021 moved to a fulfillment warehouse called We Are Fulfillment. They have been absolutely fantastic since.
Yeah.
And that's who we're now with. So, I mean, how was it shipping, orders from our little one-bed Birmingham flat?
Yeah, I don't know how we did it, really. Like, there's just not enough room. And then I'd, just take stuff to the post box when I could, like, during... I think I used to put it in my rucksack and then take it, like...
Yeah, you did.
Just before work or, like, at lunchtime.
I remember you kind of stomping off in the background, with the backpack on.
It's crazy to look back on it. And then, yeah, actually, Mum doing it was really helpful because I think I probably would have given up otherwise. It was too much.
Without a doubt.
I was never interested in it. I don't like writing. So writing out all the addresses as well, that was painful for me. And you know what? The straws used to have little tags on, and I used to handwrite on every single one.
Every single one.
Thank you for saving the turtles. Every single one. No wonder I hate writing. It's probably come from that. It was
so painful. And we had like thousands of straws in our Birmingham apartment.
Yeah.
We were sitting there like, I remember opening this cardboard box with thousands of straws and just thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do with all of this? And we had a tiny flat. We were very like early in our careers. I mean, I remember friends would come over and we'd pump up the bed behind us. And
we had friends stay and they'd stay like in our room on an air mattress because there was nowhere else for them to stay. So yeah,
and that was Sock HQ or Straw HQ.
Yeah, that was Straw HQ, and yeah, very almost handmade, I guess, with all the labels and stuff. But I think at that time we were looking at it as in terms of do things that aren't scalable to then become scalable, because those messages, a handwritten message probably built me a lot of loyalty from customers. Then we progressed it. It got to the point where I couldn't sustain that. So I moved on to like an ink stamp. So I got one printed to say, thank you for saving the turtles. Then we stamped them on with a logo on the other side as well. Still not scalable, but the next step up. And I think it's always been about what is the next scalable step to because it suddenly became the bottleneck. I've got videos of me and Mum tying up these labels onto thousands of bags of straws on the dining room table at home.
And I think also there was probably an element of you probably would have quit if you had done that, if you had kept going, but you kind of looked at outsourcing it because of where your energy was as well. So you could have definitely taken it back from your mum and said, actually, Mum, I'm back. I want to keep going. But there was no energy in it for you. And I think that's a really crucial lesson as well. So many people just spend all of their time doing something they hate, and then they wonder why they hate doing this business.
Yeah, you've got to let go.
There's always people, exactly.
You've got to let go of certain parts. And it's like a typical thing for an entrepreneur to become their own bottleneck. You've got to outsource stuff. It's happening all the time. There's still stuff in the business now that I'm like, I need to pass that on because I'm holding us back. And it's usually, I'm not someone to hold on to it because I'm a control freak. I don't mind delegating something because I actually really trust the team. But sometimes I just haven't taken the step back to look at the workload and be like, what? Why am I holding on to that when actually someone could probably do a better job? Because I've not given it the time of day. So yeah, a real crucial lesson that reducing my workload, or no, because my workload seems to just keep growing and growing, but in the right places. I need to unlock and work on the right things rather than, I shouldn't be handwriting notes to customers.
But I also think it wasn't something that like, you know, we consciously sat there and was like, okay, now we're spending too much time doing X. Let's replace it with doing Y. Like
Right.
it was quite like we got almost lucked into it. And I see so many people kind of beating themselves up, being like, oh, I should just like know exactly what to do now. But sometimes like you just need to actually experiment and see what sticks. And then typically it's almost like a river flowing down. It just finds the easiest path. And the easiest path was it going to your mum, who actually loved doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And I paid her as well. So it was, it wasn't slave labor or anything. But yeah, it was good. It was a good like couple of years for the business. And like looking at the revenue figures, it was manageable. The tipping point into the fulfillment warehouse was I was looking at getting enough stock in for 2021 Christmas. And I was like, this isn't like from a volume wise, I was like, where are we going to put this? Like, because it was literally like socks were shoved in any place we could find in my parents' house. Like there were socks in my like cupboard in my childhood room. My sister's room was just covered in boxes of socks. So I was like, actually, we need to find somewhere to put these socks. Started looking at like
a storage container.
Storage container, like,
or like a storage warehouse type thing.
Like personal storage, or those like yellow box warehouses or whatever they are. So expensive. Hundreds. Like it was like £700 to £900 a month, and I was like, that's ridiculous.
I think it was a bit less. I think it was more like kind of 400, but then we'd have to like stock it out ourselves, kind of get everything there. It would have been like a 20-minute journey for your mum to kind of go out to it.
Just not sustainable.
Packing all done yourself. And then I remember kind of you came across We Are Fulfillment, and that was like an unlock, especially around like storage costs. I think that was the thing that like pushed us over.
Yeah, and actually this is a really good example of exploring options that are ahead of what you need right now. I didn't think I needed fulfillment, but I was in a networking group and someone reached out to me from We Are Fulfillment and said, let's explore these options. I started talking to them. I thought, you know what, guys? Great. I would love to work with you. Just don't feel like I'm ready yet. So kind of had them teed up, and then suddenly I was looking at this and thinking, oh, I've got a lot of stock incoming and nowhere to put it. So I just went back to them and was like, let's do this. And just bam. And within maybe 2 weeks, they moved very quickly. Yeah. We had the stock up there. That was it. We moved in. And I think that shows that if you've done your research and kind of like looked ahead, it's so much easier to then make the decision when it comes to it.
And I think massive shout out to Mama Jeffrey, who put in so much hard work over those 2 years. And it was actually, I think, quite sad for your mum. Being real about giving it up. You know, losing the opportunity, losing the shipping.
Yeah, I think, but sad, but she was a bit relieved in the end, because I think we were starting to really see an increase, and it was getting a bit much. So
absolutely.
Yeah, bit of both. Like I think it was good for her to be doing that and being a part of it, and she was very good at it, but there was just too much volume in the end.
And deep in our Instagram, there is a couple of photos of Lucy and Celia just packaged full, dozens of packages within their hands, just filling up this poor little box in Kings Hill from the post box, printing off labels manually. But it was the right thing to do at the right time.
Yeah, and that's such a nice origin story as well, like to look back and be like, you know, we used to carry all your orders to the post box. Like that's how small the business was. But
absolutely.
So we've come a long way.
And I think what was quite interesting as well is you touched on, you were going out to kind of look at like, okay, what's actually the people that are doing ahead of us? How do they work it out? What's like a good idea for us? And I think that's enabled us to pull the trigger on so many things. So we might not do it then and there, but then once we like find that problem acutely, it's just done. Move on next. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest things if you look at, you know, business life cycles, that as we moved from, you know, a massive corporate like HSBC, which is doing, you know, huge amounts of volume and can afford to take the time in a decision, our advantage, and we just can't afford to take that time. Once we've made a decision, move on next. Everything moved over in 2 weeks. And crucially, it had to be done like that because we were in August. Come September, October, November, as we start to scale up spend and we hit that Christmas period, it would have been impossible to do that for the next 6 months.
Do you know what I've just realised why we had to move so quickly? It's because we were going on holiday and so were mum and dad. Like this is like a very small business problem now. I was like, oh, well, we either shut the business down for 2 weeks or we move to a warehouse. And then I was like, oh, I've got about a week to do this. Okay, we're going to just have to do it.
Yeah, let's get a van and move it all up. And
yeah.
so that was, I think shipping was awesome. Interesting to also think about like where we're going next with that. How do we get that into different countries around the world? We're using We Are Fulfillment for the UK, and we can distribute to other, pretty much all around the world through those services. But do we need to start positioning socks in Europe, in the USA? It sounds like a fancy logistics thing, but just kind of like how do we improve the service offering? And I think the service offering from this shipping, if I looked at it, was quite intense on yourself when you were doing it, quite intense on your mum, because it was, if we don't ship, then a customer's not going to get it that day. If we're sick, they're not going to get it that day. And then we moved to We Are Fulfillment, and, we're getting orders out on the day before 2 p.m. Done. Moved on next. Every single day, Monday through Saturday, we don't have to worry about it.
Oh, we don't have to do anything.
It's amazing.
I've been out at a trade show today, and I was talking to someone, and I was like, yeah, the warehouse just runs. I could be getting orders right now, and they're being shipped right now, and I've got no idea. It's just happening. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And so that was kind of one of the things, I guess, that drove shipping really was our marketing. And so 2018, it was really just predominantly owned social, which was able to be done because, people weren't paying through the nose yet for all kind of traffic on Instagram. Then it was owned social and boosted posts in 2019. We then hired a freelancer, like a casual UK freelancer, AJ, who was really good. And that was kind of when we started to track ROAS, and we got an 8 times ROAS in 2020. AJ then kind of got more of an intense job, and we moved her across to Zubi who's a Pakistani freelancer.
Yeah.
And ROAS went down to 5. We were able to scale though at probably a higher retail business. And then last year in quarter 3, we moved across back to a more full-time UK agency in Paradigm Media and Charlie, but we weren't able to get that kind of like really high ROAS that we had. And that's predominantly, I think, down to the changes in iOS. We've definitely gotten stronger and stronger marketing support, I think, through the amount of time that we've gotten from these people. But I mean, the early days was kind of, on a shoestring, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult. And I think it's because it feels like money that's just going into the ether as well. And it's one of those things, you read books that they say marketing spend isn't just money out of the business, it's an investment. But when you're boosting a post on Instagram, and it's so easy and it just happens, and the thing is with those is you're going for vanity metrics as well, because they talk
about impressions and
likes and all that. And it's like, what is this really doing? But I think working with AJ. So that's when I took out that 3K loan and put it into Facebook. And part of that was working with AJ and being like, do what you can with this money. And we had one ad. And this just goes to show, like, you don't need anything fancy. I'd taken a picture of the pair of socks with my phone on the floor. Pretty sure the photo was in black and white, apart from the sock itself, because I used to do this like weird editing thing with my posts back in the day. And that just went crazy. In fact, it's still an ad that we switch on now and then today because it's got such crazy social proof. And it just went nuts. And that one ad, orangutans is still our bestseller because of this one ad. So yeah, I wish those ROAS days would come back, but it is harder to scale those ads. I think the whole industry is seeing the crunch there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in terms of social proof, we've got thousands of likes, thousands of shares, and thousands of comments just on that one ad. Incredibly powerful. And people really come to bat as well, I think, as they see a small business just trying to do a bit better. And we've always hit, I think, our key product proof points around, 10% of profits go to the animal on the sock. We make bamboo because we're trying to do something better from an ecological perspective. And we admit we're not perfect. It's not 100% of profits, but we're getting there, and we're just trying to push the industry to do a bit better in every way. And then I think it was a tough decision to kind of move, I guess, across different agencies. What was like the biggest pushes for us at that point? Like, how do people think about moving agencies? What did you think about?
I guess in the early days, it was more of a cost thing, and that's why I was working with freelancers to start with. So we found Zuby on Fiverr, and I've used Fiverr a lot. I'm a big fan. You can find
Massive
some really
fan,
good,
yeah.
you can find some really good people on there to help you for a pretty decent cost. And it's all like review backed. So I found someone that I liked his reviews, and we spoke to each other, and we ended up working with him for about a year. And then I think the next push was I needed better communication. So
I
needed more regular catch-ups. I was becoming more demanding on him, and I think there's a certain level of service you get through these freelancers before they're like, this isn't working anymore. And
we needed more of an agency.
We needed someone that was going to be kind of more proactive, more like there for us, and I think we found that in Charlie. So we made that step up, and we could afford to make that step up was the key thing.
Yeah, and absolutely. So Charlie's still working with us from Paradigm Media. If you guys reach out to him, please do let him know that we kind of sent him his way. He's been fantastic for us, and that explainability, I would also say, helps us kind of in the process. So Jess is much more involved now with building the ads, helping with the creative, knowing what works with our brand, and we're able to kind of drive the business ourselves through marketing as well.
Yeah.
So we're getting more involved as well.
That's really key because we do everything in-house apart from these things that are being outsourced. So all the content is built in-house. So we actually need someone who can come onto a call with us and be like, try this content. We're like, tell us what to do and we'll do it. And I think that worked well for Charlie as well because we're open to his ideas and willing to try anything.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's worked really well.
And I think probably the last thing I'd harp on marketing is, there's so many different ways you can do it. So we've been using, Facebook for some, Google on some, and on Facebook, just trying whatever works and kind of sticking with it.
Yeah.
So moving on to channels, I think is an interesting one to look at and how it's expanded. So 2018, purely online, 2019, online and in-person markets. 2020, we added in the markets and, Etsy to those markets and online. And then we cut markets in 2021. We added Social Supermarket, Big Issue, Tree App, and Fair. And then we went big, I would say, into Etsy through an integration called CED Commerce. Great Shopify plugin, which helps you really expand your offerings in an automated way. Again, we're not got an affiliate link for that, but we need one. So
we need to start getting these affiliate links in.
I know. CED Commerce, reach out to us. You guys have been a blast for us to work with, and would highly recommend. They also connect to other marketplaces. But then we also went much heavier into wholesale as well. So Fair, Anchor Store, Piba, Abound, Creo8. Crazy to see what's worked, what's not worked, and what we've kept.
Yeah, and what isn't a part of that is I went out and I joined loads of different marketplaces.
So many
like B2C ones, there were just so many out there. I was like, I'm just going to join them all and get my product out there. Probably the right decision at the time. Made a few sales here and there, nothing crazy, but because most of them didn't have Shopify plugins, it just got too manual. So it got to the point I was like, I'm going to have to rein this back in because I cannot manage this. So it just got to the point where I was like, actually, I can only work with you if you have a Shopify plugin. And we've reined that back, and now that's so much easier for us. And actually most of the big players do. Like, it's
the ones that have driven traffic for sure.
Yeah.
And I think also interesting, like we ended up keeping Big Issue, and that's because I think of the social aspect that's, involved with that. But throwing the spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck was really important because, looking forward, we had no idea that Social Supermarket would be massive for us in Christmas. We had no idea that Fair would be, incredibly big. We didn't think that Etsy could be a viable channel until we started to get these integrations in and see what really stuck.
And I'd like to cover off commission because I feel at the start, some of these platforms seem like they have quite a high commission. I think the most we go is 25% on some of them, and at first I was like, no, that's too much. You're not taking 25% of my sales. Actually, it's quite affordable when you think about it because it's cheaper than the cost of acquisition on Facebook. And that's the key thing, is you're not paying marketing for these channels. So if people are finding you via these channels, fine. They can take the 25% commission.
They acquired them. Yeah,
they
play.
acquired them. And actually it makes a lot of sense doing it that way around. And that's something that I didn't fully appreciate until we started looking into like the Facebook data and how much it was costing us. And there are some, I think there's like a couple of platforms out there that have come back to me and said 30%, and that's been my limit. I've just said I think that's too much.
Yeah.
You're being greedy when there's other platforms that are at 25%, and we're quite happy with that relationship. So,
or put another way, 25% is a 4 times your return on ad spend.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Really, if you're thinking about it in terms of your acquisition costs.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them you don't get to keep the contact details, which is, something you really got to consider to kind of increase the longevity of your business, but it's still quite relevant.
It's a good way to get out there when you're a growing business. Like, it probably gets to the point where if you're a brand that's big enough that you don't want to give your market share to anyone else, fair enough. But we need to get out and in front of as many people as possible.
Absolutely. And we grew massively, kind of introduced to Fair and those different wholesale platforms in 2021 and 2022. I mean, Fair, we kind of got in October 2021, and that didn't really go big until we put time into it, which I think is another thing. Seeing what could potentially work is important, but then also adding in, just giving it enough time. We hear so many people say, oh yeah, I've used Fair, but I've got a couple sales, and we're sitting there thinking like, we use Fair, but we've got hundreds. And that's just because of the investment that we put in. We found the right channels. We put a bit of investment in all of them to kind of see which ones really took off. Anchor Store was similar, decent amount of investment, not as much, I think predominantly because we're mostly a UK brand and they're stronger in EU, but giving people enough of a support. And every single time we reached out to all those B2C channels as well, Social Supermarket, and the Tree app, they did drive more sales.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's always nuts to me that people are coming and saying, oh, I don't think I want to use that channel, or I don't know, not getting many sales on it. What am I doing wrong? And it's like, you're probably not putting enough effort in. I'm sorry to say, like, we put so much work. We did over 100 grand on Fair last year, and how much time? Like, it was over 50% of our time was spent just generating as many sales as possible.
Yeah.
So much work went into it. So I think you can't just sign up for a platform and expect money to start rolling in. Like, the work is required as well. And
for every, minute we put in, we get 2 minutes out of, Fair. Just, they've got a whole team and apparatus behind them that, we push it out, they push it even more. And we've had so much support from them.
We spend a lot of time with them as well. Like, we've met them many times now. I've been to events. I went to a Q&A panel last week with them. We've really built that relationship, and I think that's what's nice about it is it could just be a transactional relationship, but we've made sure it isn't. Like, we want to be the ones that are there, banging at the door all the time, saying, "What's next? How can you help us?" But also, how can we help you? Because we go and like volunteer at their events and things like that. So I think it's doing it a bit differently, building those relationships, really important.
Yeah, and if you're an e-commerce brand, check out our website and go down to the bottom. You'll see our like wholesale footer, and you can read a bit more about Fair, Anchor Store in particular, about Creo8, and signing up if you want to retail our socks. That's a pretty easy way to do it as well.
Yeah, it's so good. Hi everyone, Lucy here. You've just finished part 1 of this bumper Candid Founders episode. I hope you enjoyed it. The good news is we've got part 2 locked and loaded, so you can watch it whenever you're ready. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments if you're enjoying the podcast so far. Enjoy part 2.